students, today in this particular lecture, we aim to encase Mauryan India in a wider perspective, which would help us to study the history and cultural development during the Mauryan rule in India. The Mauryan period constitutes a distinctive landmark in the history and cultural development of India. This period was marked not only by the blossoming of culture and arts, the growth of economy and increased contacts with other countries, but also by the formation of a unified state, the first in Indian history, which incorporated a great part of Indian subcontinent and some adjacent regions. It is no accident that the line capital of Sarnath column bearing the edicts of Mauryan King Ashoka, inscribed over 2000 years ago, has become the national emblem of the Republic of India. It was in Mauryan period that the basic features of social structure, the Varna and caste system, the major institute of ancient Indian society and state emerged and took shape. A number of religious and philosophical trends developed, including Buddhism, which was gradually transformed from sectarian monastic teaching into one of the world's three great religions. The Mauryan Empire was one of the largest states, not only in ancient India, but perhaps in the whole of the ancient Orient. Within its framework, it united a great number of peoples and tribes which differed from one another in ethnological and linguistic aspects, which were at different cultural levels subscribed to different creeds and followed different customs and traditions. So, this long historical Mauryan period is associated with important changes in polity, society and economy, and to grasp these changes, one need to examine the main trends of development of Mauryan period. In the history of India, the Mauryan dynasty is the first historical dynasty about which definite historical knowledge is available. It was the first time that the rulers of this dynasty gave the country its long needed unity and began to administer India systematically. The founder of the dynasty was Chandragupta Maurya, who probably named this dynasty as Maurya after the name of his mother Mura. Chandragupta liberated his country from the foreign rule and laid the foundation of a vast empire. His grandson Ashoka, by his parental treatment towards his subjects, made not only his name and that of dynasty immortal, but also left a living example of public service before his successors. We seek information about the social, religious and economic conditions of the people of Mauryan India from Megasthenes' account, Kautilya's Arthashastra, Jain and Buddhist texts and Ashoka's rock and pillar inscription. Talking about the social conditions, the people were happy and prosperous on the whole. They were self-sufficient. There was a high standard of social and personal morality among the Indians of his time. The whole Hindu society was based on caste system. Indian society was divided into 7 classes. These list as philosophers, farmers, soldiers, herdsmen, artisans, magistrate and councillors. The role of women in Mauryan society is of some significance. It was taken for granted that their position was subordinate to that of the men. The birth of a son was not necessary to Buddhist ritual as it was to Hindu ritual. Talking about administration, the empire was divided into 4 provinces, with the imperial capital at Patliputra, the remains of which you can see at the back. From Ashokan edicts, the name of 4 provincial capitals are Tosali, Ujjain, Swarnagari and Taxila. The head of the provincial administration was the Kumara, that is royal prince, who governed the provinces as king's representative. The Kumara was assisted by Mahatmatyas and Council of Ministers. This organizational structure was reflected at the imperial levels with the emperor and his Mantri Parishad. Historians theorize that the organization of the empire was in line with the extensive bureaucracy described by Kautilya in the Arthashastra. A sophisticated civil service governed everything from municipal hygiene to international trade. The expansion and defense of the empire was made possible by what appears to have been the largest standing army of its time. Religious conditions. The Indian society was divided into three sections in respect of religion: Hindu, Jains and Buddhist. Hinduism was the major religion at the time of inception of the empire. Hindu priests and ministers used to be an important part of emperor's court like Chanakya. Even after embracing Buddhism, Ashoka retained the membership of Hindu Brahminical priests and ministers in his court. Mauryan society began embracing the philosophy of ahimsa, and given the increased prosperity and improved law enforcement, crime and internal conflicts reduced dramatically. Also greatly discouraged was the caste system and orthodox discrimination, as Mauryans began to absorb the ideals and values of Jain and Buddhist teachings along with the traditional Vedic Hindu teachings. Ashoka initially practiced Hinduism but later embraced Buddhism following the Kalinga War. He renounced extensionism and aggression and the harsher injunctions of the Arthashastra on the use of force, intensive policing and ruthless measures for tax collection and against rebels. He is believed to have built as many as 84,000 stupas across India, and he even increased the popularity of Buddhism in Afghanistan, Thailand and North Asia, including Siberia. It is said that Emperor Chandragupta Maurya embraced Jainism after retiring. At an older age, Chandragupta renounced his throne and material possessions to join the wandering group of Jain monks. Further, Samprati, the grandson of Ashoka, also embraced Jainism. Thus, Chandragupta and Samprati are credited for the spread of Jainism in South India. Lakhs of temples and stupas were erected during their reign. Coming to the economic conditions, for the first time in South Asia, political unity and military security allowed for a common economic system and enhanced trade and commerce with increased agriculture productivity. The previous situation involving hundreds of kingdoms, many small armies, powerful religional chieftains and internal warfare gave way to a disciplined central authority. Farmers were freed of tax and crop collection burdens from regional kings, paying instead to a national administered and strict but fair system of taxation, as advised by the principles in the Arthashastra. Chandragupta Maurya established a single currency across India and a network of regional governors and administrators, and a civil service providing justice and security for merchants, farmers and traders. The Mauryan army wiped out many gangs of bandits, regional private armies and powerful chieftains who sought to impose their own supremacy in small areas. Although regimental in revenue collection, Maurya also sponsored many public works and waterways to enhance productivity. While internal trade in India expanded greatly due to newfound political unity and internal peace, under the Indo-Greek Friendship Treaty and during Ashoka's reign, an international network of trade expanded. Talking about the amusements, people celebrated many festivals and rejoiced considerably. The change of season was always an occasion to be celebrated, with appropriate amusements and gatherings, singings, dancings, and instrumental music were widely cultivated. Among the 64 arts which a well-educated man has supposed to know, dancing and music ranked high. Discussing about the education, the Mauryan rulers gave much attention to the spread of education also. Ashoka's edicts were written on rocks and pillars put up on important roads and at very prominent places at that time. The majority of population was literate. The Gurukulas and monasteries were set up at many places to teach the people and propagate education. The pupils stayed with their gurus to receive education, while at the residence of the guru they received education and they served the guru by performing domestic duties of his household. In these Gurukulas and monasteries were taught all subjects like the Vedas, the Purana, mathematics, astronomy, Arthashastra, politics, etc. Taxila was the oldest and the most famous Vidyalaya of ancient India. Even 500 or 600 years before the Mauryan period, it was considered as an important university. Mauryan rulers helped this university all the more and greatly raised its importance. The fame and reputation of Taxila University has spread all over the country as well as in the foreign land. This university held the same position in India at that time which Oxford and Cambridge have in England nowadays. The Arthashastra by Kautilya, the Kalp Sutra by Bhadrabahu and many Graha Sutras as well as Dharam Sutra were composed in this period. The most prominent of all these is the Arthashastra by Kautilya, which is very variable source of information about the government and administration of that time. Some of the historians are of the view that some parts of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata were also compiled in this period. The important book of Buddhism, Kathavathu in Pali, and many reputed books of Jainism as Bhagavati Sutra, Vaikalika, Acharang Sutra, etc. were also written in the Mauryan period. Coming to the Mauryan art represented an important transition in Indian art from the use of wood to that of stone. According to Nihar Ranjan Ray, the sum total of the Mauryan treasury of art include the remains of royal palace and the city of Patliputra, which you can see at the back, a monolithic rail at Sarnath, the Bodhi Mandala or the altar resting on the 4 pillars at Bodh Gaya, the excavated Chaitya halls in Barabar and Nagarjuni hills of Gaya, included the Sudama cave bearing the inscription dated the 12th regional year of Ashoka, the non-edict bearing and edict bearing, the animal sculptures crowning the pillars with animals and vegetal reliefs decorating the abaci of the capital, and the front half of the representation of an elephant carved out in the round from a live rock at Dhauli. Further, Kumaraswamy was of the view that Mauryan art may be said to exhibit 3 main phases. The first phase was the continuation of the pre-Mauryan tradition, which is found in some instances to the representation of the Vedic deities. The most significant examples are the reliefs of Surya and Indra at the Bhaja caves. The second phase was the court art of Ashoka, typically found in the monolithic columns on which his edicts are inscribed, and the third phase was the beginning of brick and stone architecture, as in the case of original stupa at Sanchi, the small monolithic rail at Sanchi and the Lomash Rishi cave in the Barabar caves, with its ornamental facade reproducing the forms of wooden sculpture. Talking about architecture, the period marked a second transition to the use of brick and stone. Wood was still the material of choice. Megasthenes mentioned that the capital city of Patliputra was encircled by a massive timber palisade pierced by loopholes through which archers could shoot. It had 64 gates and 570 towers. According to Strabo, the gilded pillars of the palace were adorned with golden vines and silver birds. The palace stood in an extensive park studded with fish ponds. It was furnished with a great variety of ornamental trees and shrubs. Excavation carried out by Spooner and Waddell have brought to light remains of huge wooden buildings at Bulandibagh and Kumharahar, both near Patna. The remains of one of the buildings, a 80-pillared hall at Kumharahar, are of particular significance. Out of the 80 stone columns that once stood on a wooden platform and supported a wooden roof, Spooner was able to discover the entire lower part of at least one in almost perfect condition. It is more or less similar to an Ashokan pillar, smooth, polished and made of grey sandstone. This period also marked a creative and impressive step towards the Indian sculptures, although some would consider the pillar of Ashoka as architecture, owing to their freestanding nature and elaborately carved animal capitals. Most of the art historians consider them as example of sculptures. Kumaraswamy distinguishes between court art and more popular art during the Mauryan period. Court art, according to him, is represented by the pillars and their capitals. Popular art is represented by the works of local sculptors like the Chauri bearer from Didarganj. Discussing the court art first, the Mauryan pillars were carved in two types of stone quarried from Chinar near Varanasi. The uniformity of style in the pillar capitals suggests that they were all sculpted by craftsmen from the same region. They were given a fine polish characteristic of Mauryan sculpture. These pillars were mainly erected in the Gangetic plains. They were inscribed with edicts of Ashoka on Dhamma or righteousness. The animal capital is a finely carved, lifelike representation. Noteworthy here are the lion capital of Sarnath, the bull capital of Rampurva and the lion capital of Lauryanandangarh. Much speculation has been made about the similarity between these capitals and Achaemenid works. Apart from the mention of the court art, there are enough evidence of popular art during the Mauryan period. The work of the local sculptors illustrated the popular art of Mauryan period. This consisted of sculpture which may not probably was not commissioned by the emperor. The patrons of the popular art were the local governors and more well-to-do subjects. It is represented by figures such as the female figure of Besnagar, the male figure of Parkham and the whisk bearer from Didarganj. Technically, they are fashioned with less skill than the pillar capitals and they express a considerable earthiness and physical vitality. Terracotta objects of various sizes have also been found at Mauryan sites. Some appear to have been made from molds, yet there is a little duplication. Terracottas from Taxila consist of primitive idols, votive reliefs with deities, toys, dice, ornaments and beads. Among the ornaments were the round medallions similar to the bullae worn by Roman boys. Ringstones probably associated with the fertility cut have also been found in some quantity. Terracotta images of folk gods and goddesses which have been found having an earthy charm. Mauryan art is also notable for a refinement in pottery. Use of the potter's wheel became universal. The pottery associated with Mauryan period consists of many types of ware, but the most highly developed technique is seen in a special type of pottery known as the Nadran black polished ware, which was the hallmark of Mauryan pottery. The NBP ware is made of finely levigated alluvial clay which when seen in section is usually of a grey and sometimes of a red hue. It has a brilliantly burnished dressing of the quality of a gaze, which ranges from a jet black to deep grey or a metallic steel blue. This ware was used largely for dishes and small bowls. Another art piece of economic importance is the coins. The coins issued by the Mauryans are mostly silver and a few copper pieces of metal in various shapes, sizes and weights, and which have one or more symbols punched on them. The most common symbols are the elephant, the tree in railing symbol and the mountain. The technique of producing such coins was generally that the metal was cut first and then device was punched. These symbols are said to have either represented the royal insignia or the symbol of the local guild that struck the coin. The decline of the Mauryans. The exact cause of the rapid decline of Mauryan dynasty is not known. Many factors must have contributed to the final overthrow. One reason could be that Ashoka, in his enthusiasm, typical of a newly converted to follow the tenets of Buddhism, issued a new set of rules for the public, such as the ban of animals, sacrifice, samajams and other popular pastimes and festivals. This deprived the people of the freedom to worship in a customary manner their favorite deities, especially the Gram Devtas. Furthermore, those who carried out Ashoka's order in the various provinces were strict to the point of tyranny, so that even during Ashoka's reign, we hear of rebellious beings put down. This repression of the local social customs ended within the assassination of the Mauryan king Brihadratha by his commander-in-chief Pushyamitra Shunga, a Brahmin of the Bharadwaja clan. With the Sungas on the throne, the people could return to their old customs and honor their village and nature deities, whom they represented with much skill and tender care, as seen in the monuments of Bharut and Bodh Gaya. Perhaps this accounts for the profusion of Yaksha and Yakshani figures soon after the fall of Mauryan Empire. The Shungas, although Brahmins by faith, did not persecute the Buddhists, with the result that many Buddhist monuments were erected during this period. Thus, the rise of the great Mauryan Empire was a unique event in the history of India. It was the first empire in the Indian subcontinent that came into existence by unifying the innumerable fragments of distracted territory. Great personalities have emerged as the rulers have perfected every field. Political affairs were carried in an outstanding way. Worldwide religious monuments were initiated and many other achievements of which the effects are still felt. Kautilya was generally considered to be the architect of the first Mauryan emperor Chandragupta's rise to the power, as his Arthashastra was the most important source for the study of Mauryan Empire. Therefore, to conclude the vastness of Mauryan Empire, we can say that with all its superb administration, cordial social conditions, open religious approach, high level of education, urban, conscious and civilized quality, its advanced power of visualization and full knowledge and comprehension of the third dimension in case of its court art and abundant popular art, altogether constitutes to a magnificent area in Indian history. So, with this we come to the end of this lecture, and I hope by now you must have got a clear picture about the Mauryan India. Thank you. you.